Hi, and welcome back to our celebration of 50 years of Lucasfilm. I'm Amber Sotelo from Great Lakes Garrison, and I am here with Martin Rezard. He is a special effects creature modeler and makeup guru. So we are very excited to have him here today to talk about his experience working in film and specifically working with our favorite franchise of Star Wars. So Martin, thank you so much and welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me over.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. So can you tell me what made you get interested in this? What started your love of sculpting and of art, and how did you parlay it into being able to do what you love as your vocation?
I started playing with clay when I was very young, and something came up. It just worked somehow, and I really enjoyed the media, and I just made a whole lot of little characters. And in the 80s there was a lot of rubber heavy films like Greystoke and the Gremlins and Ghostbusters and all those things were coming out, and it just caught my imagination, and I really wanted to explore those techniques. And so by studying magazines and books, and I learned some of the basic techniques, and I worked with a friend who was living in the same street as I was, and we had the same passion and kind of experimented on each other and got involved with the Super 8 scene, because at the time there was no real video, there was no internet, so you just got a Super 8 camera and filmed and waited for the development to come back and see if what you'd done worked or not. So that's how I kind of got started. And the first real jobs I had were with theater more than the film, and with puppets and making masks and making puppets and making tricky props and almost like magic tricks. I spent a lot of time doing that, and it was lovely. It was absolutely amazing. I met some really great people and I learned a lot of different things, but in the back of my mind I always wanted to go and make monsters for films. And I got a chance at one stage. My wife is Australian, and we moved to Australia. We were invited to work on a show in Australia through the theatre production we were working with. And I discovered that Australia was a great place to be, and Fox Studio was opening in Sydney, and I saw an opportunity. So we decided to pack up and go. We took our backpacks and our young daughter and went to Australia. And I just started knocking on doors and calling people and saying, I can do this, I can do that. So it was a good time to be there. I got involved with a company called MEG, and we did some work. They were doing some works on the Matrix. So I got to do some sculpting and some puppeteering on the Matrix. And then a TV series called Farscape came to town. So I did a lot of sculpting for that and learned a lot about prosthetics, and it was like a dream job. And then Star Wars came to town, and they called me and said, would you like to come and work for us? I went, yay, okay. That was Attack of the Clones. That's the first film I was working on the Star Wars universe. And it was great. It was just an incredible opportunity to be part of that world. And I was doing costume props then, so not creatures so much, but more like jewelry and bits of armor and anything that's in a costume and is not soft, that it has to be sculpted, molded.
In that film, I noted, I had read that you worked on Sam Wessels' pieces. Yeah. There are so many. Costume in that film is so intricate. Queen Amidala's pieces and such. So you had worked on those before working on the creature design. Tell me that, because that Sam Wessels' costume is a fan favorite, certainly one of my favorites, and there are so many pieces to that costume as a whole. Can you I'm sure we'd love to hear about your contributions there.
Well, at the time I was just a technician. We were giving those fantastic designs, and we had to work out ways to to bring them to life. So my supervisor was Ivo Coveney, who's still doing costume props, and he's currently on Ant-Man, and he does all these fantastic films. And he's the world of costume props, and especially with Ivo, is extremely precise. It's like it's model making put to the max. You're like half a mil is too much of a difference. You know, it has to be absolutely perfect. So it was quite a learning curve when you come from slashing clay together to have something that looks like a creature. It's kind of a different sort of a trade. But it was amazing. The designs were really solid, and we just broke the designs down into, this is going to be costume, this is going to be, we're going to have to sculpt this, sculpt that. And then we try different materials. Some of them have to be hard for the hero copies that can be polished like metal. Some of them have to be soft for the stunt versions. There's so many different steps involved into creating those things. It's incredible. We even, for some of, there's a necklace that Amidala wears in a scene that was shot in Italy, and it had inlaid mother of pearl. So we had to actually get real mother of pearl and just cut it and sand it and burnish it and put it in place into the metal frames that we did. The most beautiful thing about costume props is you're making the real thing. When you're doing creatures, you're just trying to reproduce movement, flesh, bones, movement. But when you're making jewelry, you're making the real thing. It's going to be handled and studied very precisely, probably put in exhibitions. So the stakes are quite high into the degree of detail that has to be put into the manufacture of those items.
That's exciting. I can imagine. I know just it is a treat when these pieces are on display. Whenever an exhibition such as the Power of Costume or one of something like that travels, or at Celebration when sometimes there will be items on display, and you get to look at the real craftsmanship that is involved in something that may just have a very limited amount of screen time. It may be one shot, but the amount of time that was spent on that is just really astounding, and testament to the craftsmanship that you and other artists have, your time and the intricacy. Again, it's something that may just be right by the viewer for a moment, but so much is imparted in that amount of time that piece is real, it's physical, and that's just beautiful. So I applaud the contribution, so many little bits that go into those things. And then you translating this later on into reproducing flesh for the sculptures, and I want to hear about your experience there. You've created a lot of amazing on-screen presence characters, and I do love Beezer Fortuna. And
oh yeah, he's good, that one.
Love to hear about him.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was Gareth Edwards, the director, had this idea. He was quite. Some directors, they're not sure what they want, and they give you a bit of freedom. But Gareth had kind of a good visual idea of what he wanted, and he had spotted a little maquette that was created at the time of Return of the Jedi, which later became Bib Fortuna. But there was something in that maquette that wasn't present in the makeup, and he wanted to go back to that maquette. And we found a performer called Peter Liddell, who has a very, very, very long neck and kind of very specific sort of proportions. And we managed to get him on board. And I did some variations on different designs that were as close as possible to what Gareth wanted. And then we broke it down into parts. The tentacles were molded separately. There was a neck, forehead, and then a face, I think. It was all run in foam latex because there's something great about foam latex. It just moves so well. And then it was quite a involved makeup, but it looked great. And the first time it was shot, it was actually bare-chested. He was in the jail where that big guy, I can't remember his name, with the tentacles that read your mind. He was in that scene originally.
The poor Gullet.
Yeah, Gullet. That's him. Yeah, he was in the prison with Gullet, and then the scene was rewritten and he was taken out, and he appears only the camera is tracking and you see him in the background and that's all you see of him. And it happens quite often that you invest a lot into what you do, and you wish more people would be able to enjoy what it is. But life being what it is, you don't always get as much coverage as we'd like to. But he came from, this character Beezer came from mainly the amazing proportions of our performer, and then whatever you do on that guy, it's going to look great anyway. So it's a great help. We try and work with performers that we've worked with before as much as possible, because when you've worked with someone and you know that you can rely on him, it's kind of a safety, it's a security. You don't have to go hunting and hope that it's going to be okay. You know that you've got experience, you've got history together, you can go back to him. And there's kind of since we started on Force Awakens, there's like a core group of performers that we go back to don the masks and the costumes and the prosthetics, etc.
There's a skill to being able to wear a creature and emote in a creature. And so I can see that there would be a great partnership between the person who develops that creature and the design, and then the person who then takes that step to breathe life into the character that you've envisioned. You mean, I imagine as you're sculpting, you have an idea of how you want to see this creature come to life. And then it's wonderful that you have a resource in certain people that can do that and take that final step in the process. Do you have, when you're designing something, this one came from a maquette, but when you're designing, do you kind of think, oh, this is going to be perfect for this character? You mentioned this gentleman, a particular face shape, so it kind of lends itself to, I know this person can become the creature, but also can carry these additional pieces, and it will look natural and very, very real, organic.
It helps making things doable if there is, even at the design process, an idea of how we're going to bring it together. We tend not to design things that are too far from the human body, or if they are, then they become puppets or giant creatures which are worn by several performers. But it's very helpful to kind of have an idea of how it's going to work before we start developing it. And we have performers, we have, when I say we, I'm talking about the Neil Scanlon creature effects department that I have been involved with since the start of the new series of the Star Wars films. And it's not that simple to be a creature in a film. You have to accommodate to the weight and the noise of the motors if you're in animatronic heads. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure that those performers will be able to get in and out, not without spending too much time. We need to be able to give them air, give them water, give them toilet breaks. There's lots of elements that come into play. Apart from the design and the sculpting and the molding, there's all the fabrication side of things, which is like, fabrication is like the dark matter of creature effects. You don't really see it, but if it wasn't there, nothing would stay together. So it's about building muscle suits underneath, having zips, having pockets for battery packs, all these kind of things. Everything has to be thought of and planned and experienced and problem solved constantly. Which is why we kind of, when we find a group of people that we work well with, once you're in that group and your communication is okay, then it just makes the whole thing a lot easier to, because they're not simple things to make, and they are try and tested recipes, but every new one is a new adventure. Every new one is a new series of problems that we're going to meet again. How are we going to mechanize that? How are we going to synchronize and program the motors, and which skin should we use, silicone or foam latex? So it's a lot of fun and games.
It sounds like it. And I appreciate what you say, that all the time and attention spent on something that may only be on camera for a little while. But I have to assure you that, at least in our fandom, I know whenever there is we see an alien or something that is from a previous, is from Wars universe, like in the case of Fortuna, that the eye goes right to it, like, oh,
Mm,
Twi'lek, or oh, it's this, and it's so exciting. So it's
mm,
appreciated, and the time is not lost, because that
mm,
character is to see. It's like seeing an old friend, like, oh my
mm,
God, there is another character, and here is just, he's maybe younger or maybe older, or this is a little bit different in his development, and
mm.
so exciting. So
Yeah, this is one of the things I really enjoy. I was given the task on The Force Awakens to re-sculpt Admiral Ackbar. I was really,
yes,
really glad to have that landing on my desk, because it's been one of my all-time favorites. So spent a lot of time studying the original and trying to find as much information as I could about him, and visual information, etc. And then, so we did him for Force Awakens, and then Rogue One came along, and Ed director wanted a similar sort of species, but very different, and that's how Raddus came along. And so I had a chance to develop the looks of Raddus with the director, and push the sculpt as far as I could. And then it was mechanized by Gustav Hogan, and the quality of the movement of the mechanism is absolutely superb. And it's one of those that got a little bit of screen time, which is why it's one of my favorites out of all the ones that I managed to work on. This one was important in the storytelling process, and that's when it pays off, when you're not just creating another monster, but you're involved in the storytelling part of things. That's becomes really engaging. And the beautiful thing about Raddus is that almost 95% of what you see of him is what it was on set. There are little adjustments, little corrections, digital here and there, where we get to the limit of what he can perform, and they need that extra little bit. But most of the Raddus on screen was the real Raddus as he was on set, which is it was a nice piece of animatronic, that one.
it's an achievement, and it is, I see what you're saying, that there a lot of the aliens, and sometimes when there's a group of them, it becomes part of the set, and they're moving, and they're characters, there's life in them, but they're not, they're a piece that's creating the ambiance of that scene. But then when you're able to create something that is a new varietal of an alien,
Mm.
and also as a character, and as you say, it's moving the story forward, and people become invested in that character, and the movement of that character, and becomes real. That is an amazing achievement.
And we pushed it on the Rise of Skywalker. JJ wanted to see Admiral Ackbar's son, so, and I got to design him and sculpt him and revisit that species once again. And I was watching that scene yesterday, and I was just absolutely stunned by the quality of its movement once again, by how lifelike he is and how alive, and it was just absolutely marvelous. It's just it's great to be able to have a continuity in what you do like that.
Absolutely. And that must be, I love that you watch the film and enjoy seeing that. I mean, even knowing that is a true testament to your work and the actor's work, that when you're watching it, you, I'm sure, have in your mind the process that developed that character, but now you're just watching it, and it's living in that moment, and that's just wonderful. And so the Ackbar and Raddus are your favorite characters, you think, that you've participated in work?
Yeah, them all together as a group. I can't remember. I'm not very good with names. I can't quite remember the name of the young young the young calamari in Rise of Skywalker. But that's just, yeah, that group was
Aflab,
Aftab,
yeah.
Aftab. Yeah, that's him.
Aftab Ackbar, yes.
Yeah, that's him.
I
Yeah,
may be pronouncing it wrong myself. I'm sorry. Apologies to everyone concerned if I did.
but yeah, I think I'm very proud to have been given some sort of task was looking after those, and especially because I remember going to see Return of the Jedi as a kid, and I was very impressed with that character, with the way it acted, the way it moved, the way um, that big voice. It was just yeah, it was a trigger for me when I was a kid. So it was an honor to be able to be asked to recreate those guys.
There's another character I think that kind of took the Ithorians and expanded on them. That you worked on Pastor Omlin, the
That's right.
hammerhead,
Mm.
um, uh, lovingly referred to as the that alien, and changed it to be a different species of the same.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the hammerhead is very specific, and it was just that strange shape that I really liked that shape, and I wanted to refer back to it. One of the things we were trying to emulate in the design phase since we started on Force Awakens is trying to be true to the visual language of Star Wars, and it's in a way you couldn't imagine seeing an alien that comes from, say, Men in Black, feel at home in Star Wars, or you couldn't imagine an alien from Star Trek be at home in Star Wars. There's little nuances, things that are
Yes.
quite tricky to put your finger on, and so we were constantly trying to um, draw from the original cast of aliens, and um, I did like that shape, and I wanted to see if I could use that shape and bring something that was kind of not exactly similar, not a copy, and not a, but just using it to see where it could go, and was like a free form exploration. Um, and the first design I did for this, it was very complicated. It was like mounted on like robotic spider legs and stuff, not the kind of stuff that you can make easily. So we just turned, but there was something that captured the director's imagination. So we just developed it a little bit more and made it more feasible. And there he was, yeah, designed and sculpted, and I just took it on set as well. I was looking after it on set with the mechies and the fabricators, and I was given the remote control so I could make him blink and move as well. So
Oh, that is
when you can do the whole journey, it's kind of, you feel like you've completed the task. It's quite a good feeling.
you just delivered a baby. You was just
Yeah,
from start to finish. You just
and
created that
yeah,
character.
I would never claim any of those characters for my own. I was part of a process, and it's because all the amazing people that are part of that department that can bring those characters together. So it's always very rewarding to see that you can bring the best out of each other to kind of achieve something that's
It's wonderful.
yeah.
Isn't it interesting too what you said, that there is an intangible that just identifies something as being within the Star Wars universe? It either is or it isn't. Just to say, you can recognize something that it is, oh, that this does not look like it belongs in, and this does. And it's such interesting. It's a nuance. It's like what makes something appear to belong in a particular universe, whereas something else doesn't quite fit. And it's just something you get. It's like it's a known thing, yet it's hard to quantify what exactly is it that puts that character feeling at home within that universe. And you've created characters that are fit, and that's wonderful.
I was lucky. I was given the task of looking after creatures that were already settled in that universe. So I had guidelines, if you will. But yeah, no, it was one of the challenges of designing for those films. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now the effects and the props, and have you worked on, when you're working on full creatures versus working on something that's more of a prosthetic? on a human form that's maybe changing it slightly to make it an alien race, but if there's a more subtle change, do you enjoy that work as well? And how is that different from completely immersing a person in a suit that you don't recognize as a human in there versus adding prosthetic pieces to change the person slightly?
I think what's interesting for me is the variety of the work, and the one day or for a month we'll be developing prosthetics, which is it's lovely. It's really nice. It's like a desk job, and you don't have to throw huge bags of clay onto a huge armature. It's kind of it's a bit like a holiday, but just being able to move from one to another, even being able to there's a moment when the modeling, the sculpting is done in the computer at the design phase, and then we extract that as either as prints or as 2D, and then we move into the real world of sculpting. So every time you change the scene, it's kind of refreshing. Like when if you are at the final phase applying a makeup, it's completely different than all the workshop work. You wake up really early. You have to be extremely prepared, extremely organized. You have 3 or 4 hours of very, very intense application. And then after that, you're just waiting for it to break down so you can fix it. And so it's a very different rhythm than spending 10 hours a day in a workshop, working every minute of it. What's really enjoyable is the contrast between the different type of things I'm involved with. And just when you start building something, you have to constantly go and talk to the mold makers and the people who run the foam and the people who will paint it, just to make sure that what you're doing is going to work for them later on. You talk with the mechies, you talk with everyone, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what's coming their way, and they can have an input into saying, if we do it more like that, it's going to be easier. And so there's always compromise, and that's the part that I really enjoy, just the interaction and the kind of sorting out of trying to anticipate what's going to go wrong and trying to make sure it doesn't go wrong. That's really enjoyable.
What have been your of the characters that you worked on, more prosthetic pieces? Do you have a favorite that you were able to participate in?
Beezer was really, I really liked this one. I really did like working on Beezer. And then on Rise of Skywalker, I was involved with recreating Palpatine.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So it was a very long design process. Did some designs for his look, is like his first phase look, and then the contraption that he's kind of traveling into.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very intense sort of design phase, and then I got to recreate the Emperor's makeup, and that was quite something, and try to be as true as possible to the original, from the original films. And then I went on to apply that makeup with Lucy Sibic, who has won an Oscar for her role in The Darkest Hour, when she turned, it was the film about Churchill. So working with her was fantastic. I learned a lot just working by her side. And that set, when the Emperor is finally back, and that huge throne room with that set was just absolutely mind-blowing. And being on set that day, seeing Ian in his makeup in that set with the director there, it was like, this is pretty cool, is it? Yeah. and then as I was thinking that, in walks Spike Lee, who was in London at the time, collecting a BAFTA for a Black Klansman, and I was like, yeah, that's good. I like working here.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by the Emperor, the progression of his as he's reconstituting and coming back, and the hands I found so that something about the well done hands is so disturbing. Just it's a subtle menace to them.
Yeah.
So that very poignant seeing like that part of the creature design.
These were recreated digitally. We had some makeup on his hands and such, but the kind of really weathered out hands, they were recreated digitally by no, they're wonderful work. Yeah.
Now your work then, I mean, it all comes together, the digital effects and like and the practical. How do you find, I mean, I'm sure you were a fan of the older generation movies and where everything was practical effects, and how do you feel that, you know, if things have obviously changed and the technology has progressed, but there's still a place, I think, for those practical effects, and there's just a weight to them, a presence in them. And how have you seen, watching that progression yourself firsthand, how do you feel about how the technology has advanced us?
It's coming to a point now, from what I see from my involvement in it, where there's a good balance. It appears that practical effects have gained a new youth, a new life, if you will. People are after the first explosion of CG and digital effects, and there was a lot of excess in how they were used, and some of them were great and some of them were poor, just like rubber effects. Some of them are great, some of them are poor, but we are coming to kind of work together better now. I use digital tools on a regular basis, either for designing or even for printing, or even for printing very large creatures. That's one of the big advantage of the digital sculpting methods, that you can solidify, you can sign off a design on the computer. You can have a small print just to make sure that it works as well in the real world that it looks on the screen. And then from that, you can have it printed the size you want. And sometimes you get it. Recently we did that where we printed a very, very large creature, but we didn't print it to the highest level of detail. We just printed like a polystyrene foam, and then we added a layer of plastiline everywhere, which we took the time to sculpt and refine to get that feel that it's for real. And then it got molded and cast in foam latex, etc. But the digital tools were extremely valuable in that instance, and plus the design that was created in the computer is passed over to the VFX companies who used it as reference for their digital creations, and the blend is getting more and more seamless, if you will. And that's what I really like. When we did with Neil Scanlan, once again, when we did Jurassic World, the previous one, we did that T-Rex that's in a big container, and we did the head and the neck, and the rest was hidden away. And sometimes it's enhanced digitally, sometimes it's just our puppet. It's we did the Indoraptor head, and we sculpted it and molded it and operated it, and then it gets enhanced. And it's great to have a bit of both. And for the people who work on set to be able to be there and see something, move and react to it, and have it and see the person working it, it just makes for such a good experience. Yeah.
So, and I love that. I wanted to make sure that we did talk about your love of dinosaurs and your work that you've done on Jurassic World, because certainly that's taking a design and blowing it up to dinosaur size. So it's an exciting process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. The last big film I was involved with was the next Jurassic World, Dominion, and I can't wait to see what it looks like, because it was a beautiful experience to be able to work with the director Colin Trevorrow and everybody on the production. It was quite special.
And that can be a long process, I'm sure, from what the parts that you developed that were the physical parts, and then knowing how it's going to look on film, but then sometimes a long time to wait until seeing that realized. How exciting must that be to, this is what I knew it would look like. This is how I know a dinosaur to look and move, but now I'm seeing it on the screen. And how is that as a contributor to that whole process?
That's the magic. That is the real magic. It's something I discovered very early on when I started years and years ago doing masks for theatre. I was really young, and I was putting a lot of passion into the modeling of a face. And when you do so, when you get so involved into what that face looks like, you think you own it in a way because you spend so much time developing it. And so there's a sense of ownership to a degree to that you're creating. And then you mold it, and then you cast it, and you paint it, you put it on a performer, and then suddenly it becomes something else, completely different. And you go, what happened? Is that how did that escape me? And suddenly it's being multiplied by 10 times. Just it's been betterized. Because someone else got involved, and some you gave it as much as you could, but then if you start sharing it with someone else, it just becomes something so great, and it takes a life of its own. And it's a little bit the same process when working on films. You're given a task, you do it with all your heart, and you kind of solve as much as you can and deliver as best as you can. And then once it's filmed, it's going to get edited, it's going to get lit, it's going to be digitally changed. And that's out of your hands, but seeing the final product is always it gives you a bit of you're still an audience. It's not something it's not like you know exactly what's going to happen and when and why. You're still kind of you can still be surprised and be touched. So it's good to let go.
You work in when you work with people you trust, and there's beauty in that collaboration, and then you see that I think the trust goes both ways. They're trusting that the task that you were given, you're executing exactly to how they would see it done. And then on the other side, they're taking that piece and they're adding more magic to it. And then at the end, you see where you met each other halfway and create something that is two parts of a whole that wouldn't have been realized had the collaboration not happened. And that is magic. That's amazing.
Yeah, and very often it's not what you read on the script, or it's not what it's just becomes much more than that, because it's all there's so many people involved in it and so many talent coming to feed the final product. It's just it's good. It's not a bad job.
Wonderful experiences. So as a fan, what is your favorite moment in Star Wars? What inspired you, and to be able to work on Star Wars and have a love for Star Wars? What was your favorite moment?
I think the Rancor scene was quite something for me. Yeah, because it was so brilliantly executed. It was there. It was such a great design. It moved so well, and it had so much weight, and it was fun. And it was just like, you can make crazy things and make them move and give them a bit of believability, and you can tell a fantastic stories using such tools. It's just it was a big moment, the Rancor. Kind of I did like that one. Still one of my favorites.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful that I mean, Star Wars is such a great unifier. I think you can ask anyone what, who have seen the films, and they'll tell you a moment that resonated with them. And then sometimes it makes you appreciate a scene in a different way than maybe you had yourself. It's like, oh, that's what touched you about it. Well, this is what that same scene, this is what touched me about it. And it's just such a wonderful common thing amongst all of us to be able to franchise. And that's why it's so wonderful to celebrate these 50 years of film, and who's been part of them. It's just been a wonderful experience for myself to be able to speak to a few people and just share share a love of something that and see it from so many different perspectives. And I so appreciate you sharing your time and your perspective with all of us. This has just been wonderful.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be invited. Thank you for having me. I'm just a little cog in a big machine, but thanks for paying attention.
Well, we appreciate the work you did, forwarded an amazing vision, and that your talent and time is I loved hearing the inside story of how some of those creatures came to be and some of those characters came to be, and they moved forward a story that I love and that our viewers today absolutely adore. And so thank you for your time and talent, and thank you for being an amazing part of Star Wars, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.